there is a difference between burnout and flame out.
Yeah.
Can you speak on that a little bit? Because I think that this is so important. We've all felt burnt out. We've all felt that, right? We get fatigued and we get in the point where spiritually we just feel burnt out. But can you explain the difference between burnout and flame out?
Yeah. So that came from Stan Morton. Shout out to you, my spiritual father. He's my Paul. He explained burnout as what happens normally, not normally, but what happens to some pastors. I found a definition that couldn't help us to understand what burnout is. Burnout is a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress. It occurs when you feel overwhelmed, emotionally drained, and unable to meet constant demands. That's burnout. You don't even have it in you to give what you're supposed to give. You're drained, you're tired, you're overwhelmed, you're exhausted mentally, you're stressed out, and so that's a sign of you need to take a break. That happens. Flame out is the same state, emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by a neglect to see God as our rest. And then what happens is you act sinfully and you rebel. For instance, burnout could be, listen, I need to step back. I can't preach. I can't minister right now. I need a sabbatical. Flame out is, you go into a relationship, when you're married, you commit adultery, you commit sin. That's flame out. You know what I mean? Which there's no excuse for. And the tricky thing about flame out, quote unquote, is that people try to tie it to being overwhelmed, emotionally drained, but it's actually caused by neglecting Christ. That's really the issue. And they try to cover it up with, nobody loves me, or the church did me dirty, or whatever. It's like, no, you disobeyed God because God wasn't enough for you. So that could happen too. So those are the differences, and we're seeing that in our culture and pulpits across our country. We're seeing men, just fall hard. And we can't attribute that just to being overwhelmed with ministry, so forth and so on. Sin happens because the person felt like God was not enough. And so burnout is not that. Burnout is just the reality of just needing a break, needing time off. And that's something that I experience.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think that was definitely something we needed to share, because we need rest for the soul. It's so important, and that's not talked about enough. When they do talk about like anything being rest for the soul, it's always yoga. And I'm not saying I'm against that or anything. Like, what I'm saying is, it's always, let me say this in another way, not just yoga. It's always another religion. Not too often in Christianity is rest for the soul emphasized.
Yeah.
A lot of times it'll be going to a whole nother religion in order to feel. So then you're a Christian, but then at the same time you're picking up Buddhism or Hinduism in order for you to get rest for your soul. And
that's wild. The
Bible speaks about rest for your soul so many times throughout Scripture. Jesus even says, "Come to me for rest." And it's just not talked about enough.
God's people mostly practice rest on the seventh day.
On the seventh day, right?
That's
which is Saturday.
Right, but the new Sabbath for us is the Lord's Day. Shout out to the Lord's Day. But the practice of a sabbatical year is definitely in the Bible, man, and I think there's something to learn from that. So those of y'all who don't know what a sabbatical year was, just briefly, a sabbatical year was the 7th year when farmers rested their land from bearing crops to renew the land, and also to renew God's people. And that's something that the Mosaic Law actually commanded, that every 7th year the land would not be planted in with crops, and food will come from what grew wild. They just took a break every 7th year. So facts about the sabbatical year, It was kept every seventh year. There was a cessation of all the labor in the field, actually. The fruits of the earth to be common property took place. The remission of debts. The release of all slaves happened also, and servants. And then mainly the public reading of the law at the Feast of Tabernacles took place. So that goes into the whole meditating upon God's law, that reality of meditating on Christ, on the scriptures, reading and finding out what God said in his word. That's important too. When you think about rest isn't just doing nothing. It's trying to reorient yourself to remember what's most important.